China may have just popped the AI bubble with their DeepSeek R1 model. In less than a week, DeepSeek's AI assistant has overtaken ChatGPT and Google Gemini in the Apple App Store for downloads, and there's also benchmarks that show DeepSeek R1 outperforming OpenAI and Anthropic Claude's best models. Now, of course, there's all kinds of ways that you can mess with data to skew the benchmark results, so take these with a grain of salt and actually test things out yourself, like I'm going to do at the end of this video. But what's hurting big tech the most here is that DeepSeek was really just a side project that took roughly 2 months of time and less than $10 million to beat out the competition. And the best part about DeepSeek is that it's actually one of the least restricted AI models in the world right now. I mean, don't get me wrong, you probably shouldn't ask DeepSeek about the Tiananmen Square massacre or why Xi Jinping looks like Winnie the Pooh, but unlike OpenAI, DeepSeek is actually open source, or at least it's open source within the context of AI models because the weights and the training procedures are open source, which should be enough for people to start reverse engineering the underlying source code of this. Hugging Face has actually created a new repo called OpenR1 for this very purpose, so make sure you keep an eye on this if you're interested in actually good open source AI. Now, the biggest stock dip after DeepSeek came out has been with NVIDIA, because before OpenAI, NVIDIA was basically the lifeblood of the AI movement. All of the popular models needed huge amounts of NVIDIA graphics cards in order to function, but DeepSeek can be run on a variety of hardware. People have already managed to get the top-of-the-line DeepSeek models running locally on clusters of M4 Mac Minis and MacBook Pros. So from what I can tell, there isn't any real vendor lock-in with this model, which means that NVIDIA's AI monopoly may have come to an end. Future models are going to use whatever hardware is going to give them the best cost to performance ratios. Of course, the people who already invested millions of dollars in NVIDIA graphics cards are going to keep on using those for the time being. But this creates opportunities to repurpose old hardware for AI. One of the supercomputer projects that I've always been really fond of are the PlayStation clusters. The United States Air Force actually has one that's named the Condor Cluster, which is primarily used for analyzing satellite images, and it's made up of about 2,000 individual PS3 consoles. And when it was first built, it was actually the Department of Defense's fastest supercomputer in use. So this neat little fact about DeepSeek might help to reduce e-waste in the future, which I think is one of the worst side effects of big tech's greed right next to proprietary software, and this might create an opportunity for other companies to create more cost-efficient AI hardware than NVIDIA. So really quick, I'm going to demo DeepSeek AI for you all on my machine, and we're going to compare it with OpenAI's ChatGPT 4o, and their O1 preview, which, as the name implies, is still in preview or beta mode, so that's fine because O1 is a reasoning model, which means it should perform more similarly to DeepSeek than 4o, but you're going to see. I'm running the DeepSeek 70 billion parameter distilled model locally with Ollama on my desktop that I built with a Threadripper 3970X and an NVIDIA 4090 graphics card. But despite that, the responses can still be a little bit slow with this model, so I'm just going to give it a prompt to work on, and we'll come back in a little bit later to see how it did. But in the meantime, we're going to go over some of the earlier prompts that I've given to both DeepSeek and ChatGPT to compare how they did. So one of the first problems that I gave to both of these AIs was the classic, how many R's are in the word strawberry? And I actually gave this to the 8 billion parameter DeepSeek R1. So this is a even more distilled version, a simpler, smaller version than the one that I'm running right now. So ChatGPT famously got this wrong just a few months ago. Of course, ChatGPT gets it right now that there are 3 R's in the word strawberry. And as you can see here, the DeepSeek R1 model is also getting it correct that there are 3 R's in the word strawberry, and it even gives us the correct positions in the word where the letter occurs. Next, I gave each of the AIs a word problem, and this is actually where I started using the 70 billion parameter DeepSeek model, and all of the questions from here on out have been given to the 70 billion model and to ChatGPT. So the word problem, or really the riddle here, is Johnny's mother has 3 kids. The first one is named Penny, the second one is named Nicole. What is the third one's name? And this riddle works best on people when you're telling it to them face to face and you do a visual misdirection, usually by placing a penny in your hand when you say penny, a nickel in your hand when you say Nicole, and then a dime or a quarter on the last kid, which makes the person focus on coming up with a name that sounds like dime or quarter. But of course, the third kid's name is Johnny. Now, both of the AIs managed to get this question right, but one of the things I really want to point out to you here is how the newer AIs actually show you their reasoning. Sometimes you have to ask them to give you this, like ChatGPT won't always give it to you automatically, but with DeepSeek, it puts its reasoning inside of these think tags. And it's so interesting to me just how human-like this reasoning reads. I mean, it's like you printed off somebody's internal monologue. So I feel like this gives us a glimpse into just how far these models really have come with being able to see that their thought process is so similar to a human's. And because you can pretty much see how these models are thinking, that can allow you to give it better prompts, like give it better prompts so that it understands you and you're able to get the output that you actually want. Now, the next test that I gave to the AIs is actually a programming one. And I scrolled past it a little bit here. So I told it to generate code for a snake game that's written in Rust. Now, Mark Zuckerberg has said, and a number of other people in big tech have said, that they believe AI is already to the point that it could replace mid-level engineers. So surely a request to generate a snake game in Rust should be a cakewalk. Now, with DeepSeek, I got this really interesting result. So right inside of the think tag, it says, okay, the user wants me to generate Rust code for a snake game, but I'm not very familiar with Rust. So this tells me that DeepSeek and the Chinese probably haven't been training their AI on that much Rust code, because I don't think I've ever gotten something like this, just saying I'm not familiar with insert programming language from any other models when I've asked them to produce code. Now again, the AI is figuring out in a very similar way to how a programmer would how it's going to go about doing this. And it even finds things that it might need clarification on. So when we go down here, it's talking about the libraries and stuff like that, but then it has a little bit of a snag. But wait, the user might want a graphical game. So here it's debating with itself a little bit whether to create a full graphical version of the snake game or to just create a terminal-based version of it. It's also debating about whether it should use libraries like Snake Game or whether it should try to build something from scratch. And then eventually it comes to the conclusion that it's going to use Rust SDL2 crate in order to do this. Now, typically, I don't recommend people who are novice developers or people who are just starting to learn how to program to use these AI tools or to go too crazy with using a bunch of different plugins and stuff like that in their IDEs that do too much hand holding. But I think this part here, where the AI is telling you how it's going to go about completing a problem, could help you catch these edge cases before you start, and it can really help you plan out how you would go about making the game. So if you're a novice, it might be a good idea to ask DeepSeek or ChatGPT to generate the code for you, but then don't actually look at any of the generated code, just look at the plan for how to go about actually writing the code. So it ends up using the SDL library, and this is the code that it output here. I'm actually going to go ahead and open this up in my IDE. So this is DeepSeek's snake game, and as you can see, there are a few issues with it. So first off, when it does these crate imports, it imports duration, but it never actually ends up using this duration. So it's got an unnecessary import, but that's not a huge problem. That's not going to stop the game from compiling, but some of these problems down here where you see the red X does. So there's no method named renderer that's found for this struct, and there's a couple other similar issues to that. So it seems like DeepSeek is having some problems